I'll never forget the morning I met Mr. Allen. He was 74, tall, polite, and always wore a soft smile. His wife brought him to my clinic because she said something strange had been happening. He pauses when he talks, she said quietly, like he's searching for the words but can't find them. Mr. Allen laughed, brushed it off, and said, "That's just old age catching up, Doc." But when I asked him to tell me what he had for breakfast, he hesitated again, searching, his mouth forming shapes that didn't match the sounds. In that quiet moment, I saw something he couldn't feel, a warning from his brain that danger was near. 2 weeks later, he suffered a major stroke. He survived, but his speech never fully returned. And that's when it truly hit me. Stroke doesn't always come crashing like thunder. Sometimes, it begins as a whisper. Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Stick, and welcome to Dr. Stick's Clinic, the place where we talk about how to age with strength, peace, and awareness. Today's episode is one that I believe every senior, every caregiver, and every family should hear. We're talking about the silent signs of stroke that most people miss. You see, when we think of stroke, we often picture something dramatic. Someone collapsing, unable to move or speak, but in reality, the body rarely betrays us suddenly. It gives us signals. The problem is, those signals are quiet, subtle, and easy to mistake for something harmless. Imagine your brain as a living city, billions of little streets carrying oxygen and nutrients, connecting every thought, every memory, every word you've ever spoken. Each road is a blood vessel, and every second, that city hums with electrical life. Now imagine one small street begins to narrow, slowly clogging with plaque or a tiny clot. The traffic slows. The oxygen can't get through. The lights flicker in one neighborhood of that city, the neighborhood that controls your hand, or your speech, or your vision. You don't feel pain. You don't hear alarms. But something inside starts breaking down quietly. That's what happens in the earliest stages of a stroke. For seniors, this is even more important. As we age, our blood vessels become less flexible. Years of stress, high blood pressure, diabetes, or smoking can make them stiff, fragile, or narrow. The heart must push harder. And sometimes, just a tiny clot can block a small vessel in the brain. The result, a moment of confusion, a bit of numbness, maybe blurry vision for a few seconds, and then it passes. You feel fine again, so you ignore it. But what really happened was a mini stroke, or what doctors call a transient ischemic attack. It's a brief interruption of blood flow to the brain. It might last a minute or even less, but it's the body's fire alarm saying, something's wrong. 1 in 3 people who have a mini stroke will suffer a full stroke within the next year. That's why we can't afford to miss these whispers. Many of my patients tell me afterward, "Doctor, if I had known what to look for, I would have done something sooner." And that's the heart of this episode. Today, I want you to understand what these early signs look like, feel like, and why they happen. Because stroke doesn't just take away speech or movement, it can take away independence, memory, and joy. But the good news is, we have the power to stop it. Awareness is the most powerful medicine there is. So before we begin exploring these signs, I want to share one more story because it shows both sides of this lesson. There was a woman named Mrs. Parker, 68 years old, full of energy and kindness. One afternoon, while reading, she suddenly saw a dark spot float across her right eye. It lasted just 10 seconds, then disappeared. She thought it was dust or tired eyes. 2 days later, it happened again. This time, she remembered something she had heard about vision changes being an early sign of stroke, and she came to the hospital. Scans revealed a small clot in her carotid artery, just beginning to restrict blood flow. We treated her right away. And that simple act, listening to her body, saved her from a major stroke that could have left her paralyzed. That's why I always tell my listeners this simple truth. The body speaks long before it breaks. The question is, are we listening? In the coming moments, I'll guide you through the most common silent signs your body may show what they mean. What's happening inside your brain when they appear, and what you should do when they do. Some are easy to recognize. Others are subtle. But together, they form a language, a quiet but urgent message from your brain saying, pay attention. So, settle in, take a deep breath, and stay with me. Because what you'll learn in this episode could save your life or the life of someone you love. Let's start listening to the whispers before they become a storm. Let's begin with the first warning sign. And perhaps the most overlooked one: sudden confusion or trouble speaking. I've seen this so many times in my years of practice. A senior who has always been sharp suddenly struggles to find the right words. They pause mid-sentence. Their mouth opens, but the sound that comes out doesn't match what they're trying to say. Sometimes they even laugh it off, saying, "Oh, my brain's getting rusty." But that's not rust. That's a moment when the part of the brain that controls language, usually the left side, is losing its supply of oxygen. It's like a radio station fading in and out of signal. The words are still there, but the connection is breaking. In one of my cases, a patient named Linda was baking cookies with her grandchildren. When her daughter asked what temperature to set the oven, she tried to answer, but her voice came out jumbled. She waved her hand, embarrassed, and said, "Never mind." 10 minutes later, she was fine again. The family didn't think much of it until 2 days later. She couldn't move her right arm. That first moment had been a silent stroke warning. So, if you or someone you know suddenly starts speaking strangely, slurring, or struggling to form sentences even if it goes away, don't wait. That's your cue to seek help. Every second counts. The second sign is vision problems blurred, double, or partial loss of sight. This one often sneaks up quietly. The brain's visual center sits in the back of the head, and it's incredibly sensitive to changes in blood flow. When a clot temporarily blocks that area, your vision might darken or split. You may see two images side by side, or feel like there's a curtain covering part of your sight. Some people describe it as looking through fog or water. It can last seconds or minutes, then return to normal, which makes it even more deceptive. I once treated a retired teacher who came to me after several weeks of what she called eye migraines. She would see flashing lights or lose vision in one eye for a few moments, then feel fine. She thought it was just eye strain from reading too much. But when we did a scan, we found her carotid artery, one of the main highways delivering blood to her brain, was almost 80% blocked. She was lucky we found it before it caused a full stroke. So remember this if you suddenly lose vision, even for a moment. That's not just an eye problem. It's your brain crying out for more oxygen. The third major warning sign is numbness or weakness on one side of the body. It might be your hand, your arm, your leg, or even just part of your face. Often, people say, "My hand fell asleep for a few seconds," or "My cheek felt heavy." They shake it off, thinking it's from sleeping in a bad position or sitting too long. But if it happens suddenly, and especially if it's only on one side, that's the hallmark of a stroke. The brain controls each side of the body in opposite ways. The left side of your brain manages the right side of your body, and vice versa. So if blood flow to one hemisphere is interrupted, the opposite side weakens. Imagine electricity running through wires to power lights on both sides of a room. If one wire gets cut, half the lights go dark. That's what happens in your body when blood flow stops to one side of your brain. You may drop a spoon, lose grip strength, or notice your smile looks uneven in the mirror. Some people even trip more often without realizing their leg is dragging. These are not coincidences. They are neurological messages written on your body. One of the most heartbreaking things I hear after a major stroke is someone saying, "I noticed it, but I thought it would go away." And that's exactly how strokes steal time. They come quietly, wait for you to dismiss them, and then strike when you least expect it. Your brain doesn't heal easily once oxygen is lost. So even a few minutes can change everything. But if you act fast, if you recognize these early signs, you can stop the damage before it becomes permanent. So to recap these first 3 silent signs: trouble speaking or understanding speech, sudden vision problems, and weakness or numbness on one side. They are like small tremors before an earthquake. Your body is not betraying you, it's warning you. Every symptom is a signal from your nervous system, a whisper from your brain saying, "Please, pay attention to me." Don't ignore these whispers, because when you listen, you give your body a fighting chance to heal before it's too late. In the next part, we'll explore 3 more signs that often hide behind everyday explanations, things like dizziness, headache, and fatigue. They may seem harmless, but they can be the quiet prelude to something far more dangerous. Stay with me. Let's move on to the next group of warning signs. The ones that often hide behind excuses like "I'm just tired," or "I must have stood up too fast." The 4th sign is sudden dizziness or imbalance. You might be walking across the room, and suddenly, the world tilts. You reach for a wall, thinking you lost your footing. But it's not your legs. It's your brain's balance center, deep inside the cerebellum and brainstem. That's losing oxygen? It feels like vertigo. But it's more than that. It's as if gravity itself has changed. This kind of dizziness doesn't come from spinning around or standing too fast. It comes from a brief interruption in the signals between your eyes, inner ear, and brain. When those signals desynchronize, your sense of balance collapses. One of my patients, Mr. Chen, experienced this while gardening. He said it felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. He sat down, drank some water, and waited. A few minutes later, he felt fine, but that episode was actually a mini-stroke affecting his cerebellum. A week later, he collapsed while trimming his plants. His stroke could have been prevented if he had recognized that first dizzy spell for what it was: a brain warning. So when dizziness comes suddenly, especially if you've never had it before, don't dismiss it. The brain doesn't get dizzy for no reason. The 5th warning sign is a sudden, severe headache, often described as the worst headache of your life. This one is particularly dangerous because it's commonly ignored or mistaken for stress or tension. But when a blood vessel in the brain bursts, blood spills into the surrounding tissue, causing pressure and pain. Unlike anything else, the headache may come out of nowhere, like a thunderclap. Some people feel it behind the eyes, others at the base of the skull. It may be accompanied by nausea, vomiting, or sensitivity to light. If you're someone who rarely gets headaches and you suddenly have one that feels explosive or new, that's not something to sleep off. It's a medical emergency. I remember a woman named Clara who told me she had a terrible headache one evening while watching television. It hit her so fast she thought she'd been struck by lightning. Her husband offered her pain medication, but she said, "I'll just lie down." An hour later, she was unconscious. That pain was a hemorrhagic stroke. Headaches like that are your body's red siren. It's not about muscle tension. It's about bleeding pressure, building inside the skull. I don't share this to scare you, but to help you act quickly if it ever happens. When it comes to sudden, intense headaches, always think, could this be my brain asking for help and seek care immediately? The 6th silent sign is extreme fatigue or sudden drowsiness. This one is perhaps the quietest of all. It doesn't come with drama, but with an overwhelming heaviness, as if someone turned off your body's power switch. Patients often tell me, "I felt like my energy just vanished." Sometimes this happens hours or even days before a major stroke. It's not ordinary tiredness. It's the brain's energy system slowing down because of poor blood circulation. The brain uses about 20% of the body's oxygen. Even though it's only 2% of your weight, when it doesn't get enough, your entire system begins to shut down to conserve energy. That's why fatigue can be an early sign that something's wrong upstairs. I recall Mr. Robinson, a 70-year-old, who said he'd been unusually tired for days. He thought it was the flu. Then one morning, his wife noticed he couldn't keep his eyes open at breakfast, as if he were drifting in and out of sleep. She took him to the hospital. and we discovered a small clot was partially blocking blood flow to his brainstem. We treated it in time, and he made a full recovery. But he later told me, "I never knew feeling sleepy could be a sign of a stroke. Neither do most people. You see, these 3 signs, dizziness, headache, and fatigue, are so easy to explain away. We blame dehydration, stress, the weather, or simply age. But that's exactly how stroke hides it, disguises itself as something ordinary. The truth is, the brain rarely sends random signals. Every symptom has meaning. The key is to notice what's different. Is this dizziness new? Is this headache unusual? Is this tiredness unlike what you've felt before? When you learn to compare the now with your normal, you begin to hear your body's language. So, if you ever feel sudden imbalance, a headache unlike any you've known, or an exhaustion that doesn't make sense, listen closely. Your body is whispering for your attention. Don't ignore it, because the sooner you respond, the more of your precious mind, speech, and strength you can protect. In the next section, we'll explore a few more silent signals, ones most people never associate with stroke at all, like coordination loss, strange sensations, nausea, and even jaw pain. These clues may seem random, but each one tells a story about what's happening deep inside your brain. Stay tuned, and let's keep learning to understand those quiet messages before they turn into something far louder. Let's continue exploring more of the body's subtle signals, those that don't fit neatly into the classic face. Arm. Speech warning, but are just as important. The 7th sign is loss of coordination or sudden clumsiness. Imagine standing up from your chair and realizing your foot doesn't move quite right. You try to reach for your glass of water, and your hand misses by a few inches? Maybe you drop things more often than usual, or feel your steps wobble. These might seem like minor inconveniences, but they can point to a stroke brewing in the parts of the brain that control balance and motor coordination. The cerebellum and parietal lobes are responsible for fine movement and spatial awareness when they lose blood flow. The world feels slightly off. I once had a patient, a retired woodworker named Harold, who prided himself on his precision. One morning, he tried to hammer a nail into a small piece of wood and missed 3 times in a row. "My hands are getting old," he said to his wife. But what he didn't realize was that a small clot had traveled into his cerebellum, quietly interfering with his coordination. A week later, he had a full stroke. Those moments of clumsiness were not age, they were alarms. If you ever notice yourself dropping utensils, stumbling on flat ground, or feeling like your hands aren't obeying your thoughts, pay attention. Your brain might be struggling to communicate with your muscles. The 8th sign is feeling detached, disoriented, or not yourself. Some people describe it as a fog that rolls in without warning. They suddenly feel disconnected from reality, like they're there, but not fully present. Others say they experience déjà vu, or a sense of floating outside their body. These moments can last seconds or minutes, and because they're so strange, many dismiss them as stress or fatigue. But these episodes can signal small interruptions in the temporal or parietal lobes, which are responsible for perception and awareness. When blood flow drops in those areas, your sense of self and your surroundings distort. I remember one elderly man, a retired pilot, who told me he sometimes felt like he was watching himself from a distance when talking to his wife. It happened several times over a few months. He thought it was just daydreaming, but it was actually a series of mini-strokes in his right temporal lobe. Once we began treatment, those sensations stopped completely. So if you ever feel detached or unreal, don't shrug it off. It could be your brain struggling to stay connected to consciousness. The 9th sign is neck or jaw pain, especially if it's sudden and unusual. Most people don't associate pain in these areas with stroke, but it can indicate problems in the carotid arteries, the major blood vessels running along each side of your neck. When plaque builds up inside those arteries, it can restrict blood flow or cause tiny clots to break loose and travel upward into the brain. Sometimes the only warning is a dull ache or tightness in the neck or jaw. Women, in particular, are more likely to experience these subtle pains before a stroke. If you notice new neck stiffness, soreness, or throbbing that doesn't come from muscle strain, don't ignore it, especially if it's paired with dizziness, fatigue, or vision changes. Those patterns often go hand in hand. The 10th sign is nausea or vomiting. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Stomach upset hardly sounds like a brain issue. But here's the catch. The vomiting center of the body lies deep in the brainstem, near the area that controls balance. When that region is affected by poor circulation, the result can be intense nausea, sometimes with no other symptoms. You might feel like you have food poisoning or the flu, but if it comes on suddenly, with no clear cause, it could be the earliest phase of a stroke. I treated a woman who came to the emergency room after vomiting repeatedly for an hour. She thought she'd eaten bad seafood. Her CT scan showed a stroke in the back of her brain, in the cerebellum. Once she understood, she said, "I can't believe I almost ignored it. It didn't even feel like a brain problem." That's the danger of subtle signs. They mimic ordinary life. The 11th warning sign is facial tingling or drooping, even if it's slight. You may notice one side of your mouth doesn't quite move when you smile, or that your cheek feels numb, almost as if you've been to the dentist. Sometimes people notice their eyelid drooping a little, or their lips feeling off. Because these sensations are painless, many seniors simply ignore them. But this is one of the brain's clearest messages that blood flow is being compromised in the area that controls facial muscles. That weakness might come and go, but it's a direct sign that your nerves are in distress. And finally, the 12th silent sign: trouble swallowing or sudden coughing when eating or drinking. This is one of the least recognized indicators. The act of swallowing involves a beautifully coordinated process between the brainstem, throat, and tongue. When a stroke begins to interfere with those signals, even slightly, food or water can go down the wrong pipe. You may cough unexpectedly, or feel like swallowing takes extra effort. Many older adults mistake this for dry throat or aging muscles, but it can actually be an early warning of brainstem involvement. I recall a patient who told me, "Doc, it's the strangest thing I choke on water, but not soup." That detail told me his swallow reflex was weakening, one of the subtle signs of an early stroke. Within a few days, he developed other symptoms, but because we already knew what was happening, we were able to treat him before major damage occurred. So, let's take a step back and reflect on these 6 less obvious signs: clumsiness, disorientation, neck or jaw pain, nausea, facial tingling, and trouble swallowing. None of them sound like a typical stroke moment. That's exactly why they're so dangerous. They're easy to overlook, easy to explain away, but every single one represents a message from your brain saying, "Something is wrong. Please check me." When I speak to my older patients, I always say this age may change your body, but it doesn't silence it. Your body still talks, it just uses softer words. It may whisper through weakness, through dizziness, through discomfort. Your job is to listen carefully, because when you learn to hear these small signals, you give yourself the power to act before the storm arrives. In the next part, we'll talk about what to do the moment you notice these signs, the FAST rule, how to recognize mini strokes, and why so many seniors miss these warnings even when they happen right in front of them. Stay with me, because knowing what to do next is just as important as recognizing the signs themselves. Now that we've learned to recognize the many ways your body might warn you, the next question is, what do you do when those signs appear? This is where something called the FAST rule becomes a lifesaver. It's a simple, 4-letter memory that could mean the difference between recovery and lifelong disability. F stands for face. Look in the mirror, or ask a loved one to smile. Does one side droop? Does your mouth look uneven, or your eye appear lower on one side? Those are red flags. A stands for arms. Try to raise both arms in front of you. If one arm drifts down or feels weaker, that's another danger sign. S stands for speech. Try saying a simple phrase. Something like "I love my family." Does it sound slurred, yumbled, or harder to form than usual? Even slight changes matter. T stands for time, because when it comes to stroke, every second truly counts. If any of these signs appear, even briefly, don't wait. Don't drive yourself. Don't take a nap. Call emergency services immediately. The sooner doctors can restore blood flow to the brain, the higher your chances of full recovery. There's something else I want you to remember. Even if the symptoms disappear after a few minutes, you still need to seek medical care. That's what we call a transient ischemic attack. Or, thanks in advance, a mini-stroke. A thanks in advance happens when blood flow to a part of your brain stops for a short time and then returns. It might only last a minute, but it's your body's loudest whisper. A final warning before a major event. Studies show that 1 in 3 people who have a thanks in advance will experience a full stroke within the next 12 months. And nearly half of those will happen within the first 48 hours. That's why you can't afford to wait and see. When the body gives you that preview, take it seriously. Let me share a story that has stayed with me for years. There was a woman named Margaret, 71 years old. She was folding laundry one morning when she suddenly dropped a towel. Her right hand felt heavy. Just for a moment, then it passed. Later that afternoon, while talking to her neighbor, her speech slipped for a few seconds. Her words came out twisted. She smiled, said, "I'm just tired," and went about her day. That night, she went to bed feeling fine. By morning, and she couldn't move the right side of her body. Her thanks in advance had turned into a full stroke overnight. When I visited her during rehabilitation, she said to me, "If I'd known that 10 seconds could change my life, I would have called right away." That sentence still echoes in my mind every time I speak about this topic. So why do so many seniors ignore these warning signs? The answer isn't just physical, it's deeply human. First, there's denial. Nobody wants to believe something serious could happen to them. We say, "It's nothing. I'll be fine." Second, there's familiarity. Many symptoms like dizziness, fatigue, or blurred vision are so common in daily life that they blend into the background. You've felt them before, so you assume they're normal? But what's normal changes with context. A little dizziness after standing up too quickly is fine. Sudden dizziness, while sitting still, is not. The third reason is fear. Some people recognize something is wrong, but are afraid to call for help. They worry they'll be embarrassed if it turns out to be nothing. But I always tell my patients, it's far better to be embarrassed for an hour than disabled for a lifetime. There's also the influence of habit. Seniors often live with multiple small discomforts, stiff joints, aching muscles, occasional numbness. When your body has a long list of minor complaints, it's easy for one serious symptom to hide among them. The challenge is learning to tell the difference between the usual and the unusual. The key is sudden change. If something feels new, sharper, or different than your normal pattern, your body is talking. Physiologically, there's another layer to why strokes sneak by, unnoticed. As the brain ages, nerve responses slow down, and sensory awareness dulls slightly. That means older adults may not feel the full force of early neurological disruptions. A young person might immediately sense tingling or imbalance, while a 70-year-old might simply feel off. The danger is not that your body stops warning you, it's that the warnings become quieter. I often compare it to an old clock ticking in a busy room. When the room is quiet, you hear it clearly, but as life gets noisy, you stop noticing it. Your body's signals are like that clock they've been ticking all along. It's just that you've learned to tune them out. Today, I want you to start listening again. So when in doubt, always act fast. Face, arms, speech, time. And remember, a stroke is not always a sudden collapse. It's often a quiet interruption, a flicker in the system. Acting fast doesn't just save minutes, it saves memory, independence, language, and the ability to hug the people you love. In the next part, we'll talk about prevention. How you can strengthen your brain and protect your blood vessels through food, vitamins, minerals, and simple daily habits. Because once you know what to look for, the next step is learning how to stay ahead of it. Awareness saves lives, but lifestyle keeps them healthy. Stay with me, and let's build that protection together. Now that we've talked about recognizing the warning signs, let's turn our focus to prevention. How to protect your brain before trouble ever begins. Because the truth is, most strokes don't come out of nowhere. They're built slowly, day by day, through habits, stress, and small decisions. The good news is that we can rebuild our protection the same way through steady, daily choices that strengthen the brain, the heart, and the vessels connecting them. Let's start with blood pressure. The most important number you can know. High blood pressure quietly weakens the walls of your arteries, making them stiff and brittle. Over time, even small spikes can cause tiny tears, where plaque begins to form. The goal is to keep your blood pressure under control, ideally around 120/80. But it's different for everyone. Measure it at home at least once a day, especially in the morning. Treat that reading like a conversation with your heart. When you see the numbers creeping up, that's your cue to take action, rest more, move more, or speak with your doctor. Think of your blood vessels as garden hoses when the pressure is too high for too long. The walls begin to crack. Keeping that flow gentle preserves everything. Next, let's talk about movement. Exercise doesn't have to be intense to be effective. The brain loves motion. Even short walks increase blood circulation, bringing oxygen to every corner of your neural network. Sample activities like chair yoga, tai chi, stretching, or gardening keep your arteries flexible and your heart strong. What matters most isn't speed, it's consistency. 15 to 20 minutes a day is enough to signal your body. Keep the blood flowing. Keep the mind sharp. Imagine movement as your brain's favorite food. Each step feeds your neurons a little more life. Now, hydration. Most seniors don't drink enough water because the sense of thirst fades with age. But dehydration thickens your blood and slows its flow, increasing the risk of clots. Aim for a glass of water every couple of hours. Even if you don't feel thirsty, add lemon slices or herbal tea if plain water feels dull. Hydration is one of the simplest, cheapest forms of stroke prevention there is. Then there's nutrition, which is where real healing begins. Food can either clog your arteries or clean them. A diet rich in whole, colorful foods gives your body the building blocks it needs to repair itself. Focus on what I call the Brain Saver 5. Omega-3 fats from salmon, flaxseed, walnuts, or chia seeds. They reduce inflammation and make your blood less sticky. Leafy greens like spinach, kale, or bok choy, which are rich in folate and magnesium nutrients that relax arteries and stabilize blood pressure. Berries and citrus fruits, packed with antioxidants that protect your brain cells from free radical damage. Whole grains like oats, barley, and brown rice that stabilize blood sugar and keep energy steady. Olive oil and avocados, filled with healthy fats that strengthen your vessel walls. And yes, dark chocolate. Real dark chocolate. At least 70% cocoa has compounds that improve circulation. A small square a day can actually help your heart. Let's not forget vitamins and minerals. Your body is a network of chemistry, and certain nutrients directly influence stroke risk. Vitamin B6, B12, and folate reduce homocysteine, a compound that damages vessel linings. Magnesium relaxes muscles, including the ones around your arteries, and keeps blood pressure steady. Vitamin D supports both your heart rhythm and brain function, especially if you don't get much sunlight. Potassium, found in bananas, oranges, and sweet potatoes, balances sodium and prevents pressure buildup. CoQ10, a natural antioxidant, fuels the energy centers of your cells, especially those in the heart. If you're not sure whether you're getting enough, ask your doctor to check your levels. The goal isn't to take every supplement, but to give your body what it truly needs. Let's move to sleep. One of the most underestimated medicines. During deep sleep, your brain clears away waste products that accumulate during the day, tiny bits of metabolic debris that, if left unchecked, contribute to inflammation and blood vessel aging. Poor sleep raises cortisol, the stress hormone that tightens arteries and spikes blood pressure. So build a bedtime routine. Turn off screens. Keep the room cool. And let your mind slow down. 7 to 8 hours of good sleep each night is like sending your brain to the repair shop. Stress also plays a huge role in stroke risk. Chronic stress keeps your body on alert, your vessels constricted, and your heart overworked. You can't remove stress entirely, but you can release it. Practice deep breathing, gentle stretching, prayer, or meditation, whatever brings you calm. Remember, calm is not weakness. Calm is chemistry. When you calm your mind, your blood pressure drops, your vessels relax, and your brain thrives. There's also one hidden danger many seniors overlook: heart rhythm changes, especially atrial fibrillation, or AFib. It's an irregular heartbeat that allows blood to pool in the heart and form clots. Those clots can travel straight to the brain. You might not feel it at all, or maybe you'll notice a flutter in your chest, or a skipped beat now and then. Regular checkups and EKG screenings can detect it early, and simple medication can prevent devastating strokes. Finally, let's talk about small daily choices. The ones that seem too simple to matter but add up to everything. Don't smoke, because every puff starves your brain of oxygen. Limit alcohol, because it raises blood pressure and dehydrates you. Take your prescribed medications faithfully, and whenever possible, surround yourself with connection, family, friends, community. Loneliness increases inflammation and blood pressure, just like a poor diet does. Staying socially engaged is one of the most powerful protectors of both heart and brain. Your health is not just about avoiding illness, it's about building resilience. Every step, every glass of water, every good night's sleep is an investment in your future self. The human body has an incredible ability to heal when you give it the right environment. You can't control everything, but you can control what you eat, how you move, how you rest, and how you respond to stress. Those choices are your daily medicine, your lifelong protection. In the next and final part, we'll talk about what happens after stroke, how recovery works, what hope looks like, and why listening to your body with compassion can make all the difference. Because prevention isn't just about avoiding tragedy, it's about creating a life where your brain, your body, and your spirit work together in harmony. Now, let's talk about what happens after a stroke, the emotional side, the human side that often goes unnoticed. Because recovery is not only about medicine and therapy, it's also about belief, patience, and compassion for yourself and for the people you love. I've seen patients who couldn't speak a word after their stroke, who thought their life was over. But then, day by day, sound by sound, they learned again. One syllable became two. A small step turned into a walk. I remember Mr. Jackson, a retired musician, who lost the ability to move his right hand. He told me, "I'll never play the piano again." But he didn't give up. Every morning, he sat by that same piano and tapped one key with his left hand. Months later, he played a full melody using both. He cried. His wife cried. Everyone in the room did. And I realized something powerful. Healing the body begins with healing the spirit. A stroke may change your path, but it doesn't have to define your destination. Your brain is more adaptable than you think. It has the power to rewire, to rebuild, to find new ways of doing old things. We call it neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to heal through repetition, persistence, and time. But what drives that process is hope. When you believe that progress is possible, you tell your brain to keep trying. Family plays a huge role. 2. I always tell caregivers, your patience and encouragement are medicine. Sometimes, a simple smile from a loved one does more than any pill. Stroke recovery can be slow and frustrating. There are days when it feels like nothing is changing. And then suddenly something clicks. You tie your own shoes again. You speak your grandchild's name clearly for the first time in months. These are victories worth celebrating. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens in moments, emotionally. Many survivors struggle with fear. Fear that it could happen again. Fear that they'll never be who they once were. But I want you to know this. It's okay to grieve what you've lost, but never stop honoring what you still have. You're still here. You're still capable of joy, of connection, of meaning. Every day you wake up is another chance to protect your brain, your heart, your life. If you're listening to this and you've experienced a stroke or you love someone who has remembered this, truth recovery is not about perfection. It's about perseverance. Your body may whisper through weakness, but your spirit can still roar through resilience. The human brain, even when wounded, is astonishingly strong. With the right care, the right support, and the right mindset, miracles can and do happen. Before we end, let me say this one more time. When your body whispers, listen. When your speech feels strange, when your hand feels heavy, when your energy fades for no reason, listen. Don't wait for pain. Don't wait for collapse. Your body is wise. It speaks in subtle ways. Listening is the greatest act of self-care you can give yourself. So, take what you've learned today and share it. Talk to your family, your friends, your community. Because knowledge doesn't just protect you, it protects everyone around you. When we understand stroke, we don't just save lives, we preserve the moments that make life worth living. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I'm Dr. Stick, and this has been another episode of Dr. Pals and Tom, Stick's Clinic. If you found this helpful, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone you care about. Together, we can build a world where seniors live, not in fear of disease, but in confidence, awareness, and hope. Until next time, stay calm, stay kind, and stay connected to your body, because it's always speaking to you, in whispers, waiting for you to listen.